We're ready to get started. Sounds like the parking lot, a few more people are coming in, but we're going to go ahead and get started because we got a lot to go over tonight. And the sooner we get started, the sooner we'll get through it and you can get home and make sure the pipes didn't freeze or whatever's going to happen tonight. Hopefully it's not going to be a storm. We don't have a lot to project. We do have some things. This is the agenda. We just want to put it up there. There's a lot of people, it sounds like, may not have a copy of the agenda for tonight. First of all, introductions. I know some of you are part of the advisory committee and some of you from the public. That's great. It's good to see a lot of folks here. We want to get as much input as we can, so we're thrilled that we've got as many folks as we do. If you weren't able to sign in when you came in, please be sure to sign in before you leave. And if you want to leave your email address, we'll add you to the communications that we have. Some of the advisory committee members didn't have those last time, so not everybody got communication about the meeting, location, and all that kind of stuff. First of all, my name's Kevin Epperly. I'm an architect. Got with me today, you met Don Seymour, he's an architect too on the way in. Also with FEH Associates, Greg Baum, another architect with FEH, and Ray Greco, who is an architect whose very expertise is courts design. We're the same group that was here last time. Greg is in addition to our team. He's been participating, and we've got some other folks on our team too that will be here during the design workshop. The first thing we talked about last time was the advisory committee's role. It is just as it says, it's an advisory committee. The advisory committee has, we're asking them to basically review the decision-making criteria, which are actually taped up on the back wall, weight that tonight, and then use the weighting of that criteria to evaluate the 6 options that the advisory committee identified at our last meeting on January 24th. And those are, this is the sheet from that meeting on the 24th. There's also a planning committee that the advisory committee will make their recommendations to. Which of the 2 options of the 6 that you want us to study, and then ultimately which of the options, after we study those options and develop cost opinions, which option you're going to recommend to the county board, and then actually the planning committee, and then the planning committee recommends to the county board. The basis of all of this is really the goals for success, what is hoped to be achieved through this process. And this is really the basis for the criteria of making the decisions on which options we like. So there's 9 goals. I'm going to go through each one of them because the text is too small to read probably. To provide a county courthouse facility that creates a safe and secure operation. That's number 1. Number 2 is to provide adequate space for functional operation. And we've gone through and identified space needs for each of the departments for the court facility, for the county building. Number 3, to provide an attractive facility that represents the county culture, a building that needs to be visible and identifiable as a county courthouse and promotes civic pride. Number 4 is the facility needs to be flexible and adaptable for future change and or expansions. It's going to be our county courthouse. We want it to be able to be that courthouse for 50 to 100 years, for a very long time. Number 5, develop a sustainable facility for ongoing use in terms of the environment, the culture, and the cost of operation. Sustainability isn't just about being green. Green is one of the 3 legs of that 3-legged stool. Being green is the environment. Sustainable financially means the cost of operation. And then sustainable as a cultural community facility is that 3rd leg. Develop a 100-year building we're talking about. This is going to last. That's what sustainability is. It's going to work for that long. Number 6 is locate the facility to provide access for all and best serve all residents of Mitchell County. So accessibility and access of all different types. Number 7 is develop a facility that promotes and leverages economic development. Number 8, provide a county courthouse that encourages citizens to participate in their government. And number 9, develop a facility solution that is fundable and justifiable to the taxpayers. So those are our 4 goals, or 9 goals that we're going to use throughout this process. We typically start those with, why are you doing this? Why are we even talking about this? How are we going to measure the success of this whole process 3 years, 5 years after we've gone through this process? So you're not looking back and saying, boy, I wish we had done this. So we've been asked to take a very kind of no surprises approach, evaluate everything we can, identify every potential option. So those are the goals that we identified through that conversation. What we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to look at the options that were identified last time. We're going to be determining if there are any others. We asked folks to think about that, the advisory committee, to think, are there other options here that you'd like us to potentially evaluate for study? We're going to be talking about what the scope of what we're doing in this phase is. We've talked about public engagement, how we involve the public as much as possible, and that's identified here in this timeline. We are going to identify the evaluation criteria, and there on the first sheet that's taped on that first panel there. And then we're going to weight that. And the way we're going to do that is, everybody here is a voter in this county. Everybody's got an opportunity to identify what they think is important to them. We have 18 criteria there. The majority of those are the ones that I sent out to the advisory committee. We're going to use to make the decision on which options we like. I did get input for some other criteria. Some of those comments are in red from that input. The rest of them, we'll verify that everybody agrees with those. We'll weight those through your voting, everybody's going to get 2 blue stickers. We want you to put that sticker on the 2 that you think are the most important criteria in evaluating the correct options. And then we're going to use those numbers as the weighting factors for each of the criteria as we evaluate each of the 6 options that you've identified. And then we're going to go through the upcoming schedule, and then we're going to talk about any other potential financing preferences. We asked you to give us input on that last time, and there were some suggestions for some potential funding and grants that might be out there in addition to public money. So first of all, our scope of what we are doing is a space needs assessment. And Ray's expertise comes into play related to the court's facilities. And he's had interviews and looked at the state standards and identified what those square footages are for each of the spaces that we need to have here in Mitchell County for those spaces. We've also looked at all the other spaces that aren't immediately related to the courts. We've evaluated the type of space that's needed for all those functions as well. We did a facility condition assessment of the existing building, meaning we've identified what are the code issues, what are the ADA issues, and what are the maintenance issues of that building. We have not applied costs to those yet, but we expect we will. We've identified what the issues are at this point. We have engaged the advisory committee and the public to start this planning facilitation. We've got a conceptual design workshop, 2 days, where our architectural team, plus a couple more, will be here. February 28th and March 1st. We'll be in a location. We'll let you know exactly where that is. It might be here. So we basically set up office, and we're going to be evaluating the 2 options that come out of this process tonight and developing conceptual design at higher and higher levels over those 2 days. The entire thing is open. You can stop in anytime you want. We'll be making kind of presentations of where we're at noon and at 5:30 or 6 o'clock the first day, and then the second day again at noon, and then it's an advisory committee meeting at 6 o'clock that second day. Public engagement. Some of the advisory committee members are doing a great job at getting the word out about this process, as well as we do plan to have some public presentations after that design workshop to go to some of the other communities. It was suggested by the advisory committee that those be held potentially St. Ansgar, Stacyville, Riceville, McIntyre, Orchard, were some of the suggestions that we got for those meetings. Those would happen probably in March and maybe into April. And then, of course, that's the end of the study that we're in. Depending on the outcome of this whole process, we'll either probably have one suggested solution, and then we'll do more detailed study of that solution as some next steps if that's needed. So, first thing we really want to do is talk about these options. I'm going to go through these because there are a lot of folks here that were not here at our last meeting on the 24th. So what we asked is, what potential options do you want us to evaluate with this criteria and compare them really to the goals? And 6 options were identified by the advisory committee. One is to renovate and expand the existing courthouse facility. Second one is to build a new courthouse facility on a new site, different location. Might be a block away, might be a town away. That wasn't identified. Number 3 is to build a new courthouse on the existing site where the current courthouse is. Number 4, somebody suggested we could just continue renting facilities the way we are right now in the situation we have. Number 5 would be to renovate another existing building for a lot of the courthouse functions. And number 6 would be to build a new courts building and then renovate some existing buildings for the other uses. And the reason why this one probably looks like that is because the square footage that's needed is much larger than the existing structure. So the existing structure could accommodate maybe about half of the space that's needed. So the first question is, are there other options? And we've asked the advisory committee to think about, are there other options that you want to evaluate against this criteria tonight? Or do these 6 represent everything?
When you say renovate, do you mean readability?
Yeah. Yes, we do. Yes, question back here.
I'd like to expand on that number 4, the continue renting. I ran the USDA office, and we had a 5-year lease. And as the owner of the property did not have, during that 5 years, he could not terminate our lease. And then we could give him notice if we needed to move, or if we were going to close the building. And then I put in mind that he would have a 120-day notice. We'd give him a 120-day notice that we would be moving or closing. And every 5 years, we would have an opportunity to renew the lease or put out for another bid. The benefit of that was, if you decided to build a new building, you could tell them what you wanted, and then somebody could put the money up, could provide the property, and you could lease it for 5 years. It would be built the way you wanted it to be built, and if you ever had to leave, you could leave. So it's more than just continue renting. It's basically putting out bids for leases and taking the best bid and with the best construction. One of the things is, you know, people keep talking about possibly we might end up having to go to Mason City for a courthouse. I don't know that that's ever going to happen, but if it did, you wouldn't be stuck with a building anymore. You wouldn't have to put the money up in front to, you wouldn't have to have the money up front to build. The person who owns the building would be the one who would have the money put up front. And I guess that's what I'd like to have added to that continue renting.
How does everybody else feel about that? Is that reasonable? Okay, this is a democracy, and one other thing I want to point out is when people want to talk, you will have to raise your hand. Please raise your hand because there's too many not to do that. Yes, sir.
I'd like to go a little bit further on that renting for leasing. At the current rate, supposedly we're spending $6.5 or $6 million. If we pay $100,000 a year on a lease, where we're at now, roughly. I think my arithmetic is right. It'll be 60 years. 60 years, your new building is already just about done for. So it would make more sense to rent. Or
I'm not a banker, and we're not here to talk about those dollars tonight.
No.
That'll happen in a few weeks, but I'm not a banker, but by the time we add interest and inflation to that, it's more like 30 years.
I don't want to do you out of a job.
The developers usually hire us to
I don't
design
pay
those
for your
buildings.
job.
Yes, sir.
So as of tonight, we don't know dollars on
No.
what the county is paying to rent,
No.
what we've got going now, or continue renting, or we will not know any dollar figures tonight on any
Correct.
of it.
Tonight's goal is, we have a blank sheet of paper. If you see what we have, this is what we have. You can't run dollars on that. The approach that we're taking is to find a solution that best fits these goals. We're going to identify two. We're going to develop them so they fit these goals and the criteria that we've all agreed upon. And then we'll study those two further and develop the costs for those two. Yes?
Could you explain to the people who have not been here before, who is on the planning committee? Now, our recommendations tonight will be forwarded to the planning committee. Would you tell us exactly who's on the planning committee?
The planning committee is actually the 3 county board supervisors. And it is, what's the names actually?
Isn't it
One of the attorney and Judge McKenna. So those 5 individuals are the decision-making group. But you're going to be making a recommendation to that group based on your input tonight and your input through that 2-day process. Okay, the next step that we're going to do tonight, and we've got these taped up behind you because there's no place to tape them up here, is to go through the selection site option selection criteria. We have 18 criteria that we've identified. I'm going to project those all up here. I can get my mouse cursor back. Okay. We've got 18 criteria here. These are the criteria that we're going to determine, you're going to determine how important they are to you. And we're going to go through each one and explain what it is and how it relates to the goals.
Yeah, you may want to pull it over so.
That'd be good. I bet you can't see that. I'm going to make it bigger yet. You don't need to see them all at once. You see that in the back? Okay, if you're in the back and can't see it, you just turn around and see it. See it up on the wall back there. Okay, these are the criteria, and we want to confirm with you that these are the right criteria. The first one is, and I'm down a couple already. First one is good security and safety potential. That doesn't mean in its current condition it's got safety and security, but it has the potential for that. And that relates to the first goal, safe and secure operation. So that means that whether we decide we're going to maintain the existing courthouse, we're going to build a new one, we're going to find another building somewhere in the county to use, there's the capability for that to be a safe and secure situation with renovation. Okay? Any concerns with that? The second one is, can provide enough area to meet the needs. And that means that we've got a building or a site, or a building that's on a site that is big enough to accommodate the total square footage of the building. Our total area is about 40,000 square feet.
Just under 40.
Just under 40,000 square feet. The third one is, it's visible, identifiable, and an easy-to-find site, so that our courthouse isn't hidden somewhere. It's easy to find. And that's, again, kind of applies to two of those goals. One that kind of came out of some input is a solution that will promote civic pride and county culture. Yes, sir.
What about that schoolhouse that was offered?
Yeah, that could potentially be, that could relate to renovate another building. That could be number 5.
Renovated, and it'd be parking and everything there and easy access and all that?
We'll be evaluating this option right here, and if that comes out to be one of the top 2, then we'll be asking you to tell us which specific sites you'd like us to study. So the 5th one is convenient location for residents and access. That ties kind of back to it's visible and easy to find, but it's convenient location for people. Again, that goes back to the access for everyone, that goal. The next one is can be a flexible and adaptable solution. Because we need flexibility, things are always changing. We're talking about a courthouse, again, we're talking about a 100-year building. So we want to have flexibility. We're not talking about it's going to change every year, but it may change every 5 years, or every 10 years, or every 20 years. So again, that capability. The next one is a model for sustainability. And a model for sustainability for us in this case is life cycle cost. We're not just looking at initial cost, but we're looking at what is the cost of this solution over a 50-year period. Utilities, operation, might be lease cost, whatever that may be. So that's life cycle cost as a potential evaluation tool. Next one is sustainable environmentally. That's what everyone calls green. So is this a sustainable environmentally solution? Next one is economic development catalyst. One of the suggestions that I gotten from the advisory committee member was tourism is perceived or is a real actual economic development catalyst. So can this building, this option, whichever of the 6 options it is, be an economic development catalyst and promote tourism, potentially. Another one is, will this option promote citizen involvement in government? Will it provide all those things that not just allows citizen involvement, but promotes it, takes it to the next level? The next one is it a fundable and justifiable solution? Again, that leads directly to goal number 9. Next one is room for future expansion. And that kind of goes back to, will that solution, can you accommodate all the space needs? Well, in addition to all the space needs, will it provide future expansion? As county governments change, or as different departments change over the next 50 to 100 years. Can there be good vehicular access and parking? We have one on here that's adjacency to a county or city park. So if that's important to people. And we don't have to say, no, that's not important now, because you'll be able to vote on it. And nobody votes for some of these, and clearly there's not a lot of support for them. Adjacent to the county jail. We've heard how important that is at the last meeting and from staff. Proximity to the county services building is another one. There's a lot of interaction, so there's efficiency in the located to the county services building. Another one is opportunity for memorial structures. I think you go to any county courthouse in the state, anywhere in the United States, and you'll see a lot of memorial structures around the county courthouse. Another one is partnership neighbors. Maybe beyond those county buildings that really require that close proximity for efficiency as possible, but are there other organizations or governmental agencies that are close to that location? And then another one that we added was, does it provide a historical reference? And again, this was a request from an advisory committee member. So does the building promote the local culture and provide a historical reference? And obviously the existing courthouse does. It gives you an opportunity to tell the story of that history. There may be some other solutions that do that as well, give you an opportunity to promote a historical reference. Depending on how you look at that. So does everybody understand those criteria? Are there, yes?
Are we going to evaluate, 1 through 6 with all the criteria? It seems to me like many of the criteria would fit any of those 1 through 6. So what are we actually voting on? I don't know.
What you'll be doing is you'll be weighting the criteria. You're going to vote on which of these criteria you think are the 2 most important criteria to you. Is it that you think it needs to have adequate parking? Or is it that it needs to be adjacent to the county jail? So
But all those 6 could meet that, so how are you going to narrow?
they meet them at different. We'll go through that process and you'll see how we go about this. We do this about every other week on different projects. We've done this quite a bit. So are there any other criteria? Yes, sir.
This isn't criteria, but I'm just looking at the options over there again, if we can jump back to that.
Yes.
Which one of them would you say would represent, we talked about the codes and that for the courtroom last time, and
Yes.
the judge is supposed to have a separate door and all that kind of stuff. Which one of them would pertain to, like, if they would build a separate courthouse right around the jail? Which one of those options, or could it be any of them, except renting?
If a new court facility was built.
Yes, just not the courtroom, not the courthouse.
Then it could be number
A
6.
courtroom and everything around the jail, because they talked about
Yep.
transferring prisoners from the sheriff's department or whatever it is over to the
That'd be
courthouse.
number 6, yeah.
And then have to take them upstairs, possibly to elevators and all that kind of stuff. And then I think we did mention, putting the courthouse in that right around, adjacent, right with the jail.
The courtroom could not be isolated from all the other functions. So
It'd have to be in the courthouse.
it would have to be, well, it would have to be associated with all the chambers, the jury suite,
Okay,
the clerk's office. I mean, there's been a request to have access from the public seating area within the courtroom directly into the clerk's office so they can pay their fine.
okay.
And so, I mean, all that whole chunk of space needs to be held together. But that could be set next to the jail. It could be an addition onto the existing building.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is maybe like if you took the courthouse and actually put it in one story.
I hope that you come back on February 28th and March 1st, because you're skipping way ahead of us. We don't want to get into the design yet, but I do appreciate the enthusiasm. Yes, sir.
I've been 2 times in the Mason City, Sarah Road, and that concept is pretty interesting over there, where the jail and the courtrooms are out in the country, away from courthouse, I believe. And it's pretty interesting. I wouldn't recommend that you move the jail and the courthouse, but I would certainly recommend that you, what that gentleman just talked about, because I think that's a very workable solution.
Okay.
Very workable.
We definitely will look at that if it rises to the top.
It's
Tonight,
deal
this
with that.
conversation. Yes, sir.
Why do we only get to pick 2 criteria? Why not 5? Why do we have to limit ourselves to only 2?
Because if we pick the top 5, there'd be too many points and dots, and it'd get to be a much longer meeting. And it's a lot easier to pick the 2 that you think are most important, and a lot easier for us to tabulate that. That's why.
With the amount of people here, if we only pick 2, you could still end up with 12 different situations. 12 different sets of criteria as far as if you could only pick 2.
It's been our-
If you
then you could consolidate them 5 into the 2 most important.
Actually, we won't eliminate, the way we're gonna do this is, everybody gets 2. We've done this a lot, everybody gets 2. There will be a lot of criteria that come out of this that are absolutely the most important. Some are gonna go by the wayside. We won't eliminate any criteria unless they only have 0 or 1 or 2 people select them. We'll use all those criteria. And we use those criteria that are left, unless nobody votes for it, to rate the 6 options. So with all the people we have here, we aren't going to have any problem with just 2 dots for everyone.
The dots don't rate the solution.
The dots don't pick the solution, they pick the criteria. Okay?
I just have a question, is the promoting tourism, would that be, since the existing courthouse is on the National Historic Register and is mentioned in almost every tourism book for Northeast Iowa as a site to see in Mitchell County, is that where you would sort of put that on the National Historic Register, would be under promoting tourism?
Potentially. Okay, does everybody understand any other criteria you'd like to see? Yes, sir.
At the last meeting, you mentioned on the needs assessment, you're going to reevaluate that.
We have spent a little bit more time on the court side doing that. And we've got a representative here, the district courts administrator is here tonight. He could probably respond to any detailed questions. That's, our thought was if any detailed questions of that come about, we'd like to hold those to the end of the meeting. But we have taken a closer look at that. We mistakenly were hoping to meet with staff today, not realizing this was President's Day. But we will be doing that before and during the 2 days that we're here for the design workshop. Yes, sir.
How much is a courtroom used in Mitchell County each year?
Well, we can address those questions after the meeting, after we go through this agenda. We'll come back to those things. We do have that information. Any other criteria that anybody thinks we should add to this list to evaluate the 6 options? Okay, we are going to...
Are you going to put on the first attraction?
It's on.
It's on. It is on there. Yeah. What we're going to do is, Greg and Ray are going to hand out these sticker dots so that everybody gets 2. This one.
The sticker dots that we do, those, but we missed the first 5 minutes. You're the architect?
Yes.
Okay. The people who are on the committee, are they gonna be the ones to get the dot information?
Everybody here gets a dot.
Okay, but these options over here, when are they gonna be decided on?
Tonight. After we rate and weight the criteria for making that decision.
And you as the architects, you are the uninvolved party in it as far as emotions go, because the people on the committee didn't listen to us in the first place. So I'm wondering if they're going to listen to us now, even with the dots.
So this is the process they've asked us to go through. So you, as the advisory committee, will be making a recommendation as we go through this process. So I think if we can get into this weighting, then we'll get to see what the top 2 things that you want us to study further are. Okay. So Greg and Larry are going to hand out these dots. Everybody will get 2. Don?
We might point out that you guys can have a conversation about different things before you put your dot. So if you want to go ask somebody else about something, or you want to ask a question,
Talk about that.
The dots go on the sheet back here.
There's 2 dots on there.
Thank you. Wondering, they don't go on the screen. There's 2 on
each one.
Thank you.
For example, okay, put that dot on this row. There's a horizontal row across. So you should be taking please do not put both the dots on the same criteria. 2 criteria. probably seen this. We had several criteria that didn't receive any, nobody's thought it was their top 1 or 2 priority. We got, some of those received 0, so there's no sense in us reviewing those. Some of them got 1. A couple of them got 1. We want to review those criteria?
Yeah.
That means they could get 1 point. We can still review those. Okay, now the way we go about this, a lot of you are asking, how do we go about this now? How do we pick the top 2? We're going to go through this and we're going to score these options against each of these criteria. So for example, good security and safety potential means these options can score anywhere from 0 to 24 points. They could get 0, they could get 24, they could get 19. And we're going to get a general feel for how they are, because when this is all said and done, we're not going to say, oh boy, this one got, how many points we got here? 98 points, and that one got 96, so the 98 wins. That's not the sense of this. But we're going to very quickly be able to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff and what your priorities are, what you want us to evaluate. If 3 of these are within a couple points of each other, we're probably going to study 3 things. But if they're not, you're going to be able to say, well, this only gets 10 points, and I'm going to look at it. So, again, what we'll do is, we're going to talk about good security and safety potential. And everybody might say, well, anything can have the potential for it. They can all get that. So everybody might agree that maybe they all get those 24 points. But there might be some solutions, and in some cases there are solutions. A lot of times it's got more to do with, oh, it's on this side or it's adjacent to that building. For example, we recently did a similar process like this. It was next to a grain elevator. And the law enforcement staff were in the room and they said, no, no, no. There's too much opportunity for something to go wrong because it's right next to a grain elevator. Not just something might blow up, but there's a height issue that really concerned those law enforcement officers. So we can talk through each of these criteria as much as you want to. Nobody wants to stay here past probably 9 o'clock, though. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, how do you determine the weight that is going to be given to each one? You said that.
You just did.
Well, I didn't know if you were going to use that because you said some.
We're using this as the maximum.
Okay.
So, for example, if we said, well, some of these have not very many points on them. Economic development, catalyst, tourism. It might be something that we say, well, it doesn't deserve the full 7 points, but maybe it's a 3 or a 4. And it's going to be the sense that I get from you. And you can all kind of look at each other too, but I can see all of you. So I can get a kind of a sense. Sometimes we raise hands. So what we'll do is we'll start with this good security and safety potential. It means it's got the potential to provide safe and secure operation. So of these 6 options, we renovate and expand the existing. So the building's on the center of the block. There is some parking adjacent to it. In this day and age, we think about civic buildings, and we think about what could go wrong when you have vehicle parking right adjacent to a courthouse. That doesn't mean we have to leave the parking there. You could redesign that whole block when you renovate the courthouse. Does anybody see any reason why that wouldn't get a 24? Why that wouldn't have the maximum potential for safety and security?
I just want to ask one question. If you renovated it, could you address all of the safety concerns with the existing building?
That's my question to you.
Well, you're the architect. Could they all be addressed?
If you do a remodeling and an addition, yes.
Okay.
I think so, but we're asking if anybody can think of anything specifically why it wouldn't. If not, and we think that's definitely worth 24. And some of these criteria are different than others. A new building and a new site, we can definitely overcome that. New building on the existing site, that can overcome it as well. If we continue renting, I know right now it's definitely not good safety and security. Is there the potential to do that in a reasonable manner if you're on a historic preservation commission?
Well, where they're out at the plot, I mean, they'd have to bring in like they brought the safety guy into the old courthouse, they need to bring them in. Maybe they've done it already.
But you are leasing that, so you do not have control over those premises.
That's true.
So I would say it doesn't deserve all the points.
No.
Because you're leasing it. They're not your buildings. So of the 24, does anybody think it's higher or lower than 12?
Lower.
Lower. About 6. Lower. 3. Who thinks it's a 3?
A 3, I'd go with a 3.
Who thinks it's lower than a 3? Who thinks it's higher than a 3? Okay, how about 4? Who thinks it's higher than a 4? 5? Okay, I got some people going like this. Who thinks a 5 is okay?
Has everybody been there? Has everybody looked at both of these buildings?
Yeah, we have multiple. We have multiple buildings. The people who think it's a 5 have been to those facilities?
I have not been to Fox River.
Okay. Okay. We're going to give that one a 5. Renovate another building. This is hypothetical. So the potential is if we found the right building, you could do it. We don't know what those specific buildings are. And if this one scores high, we're going to have to identify what those are tonight, because we'll need time to do research on those buildings. So hypothetically, another building that would be renovated or maybe added on to.
I'd say that school.
Yep, we've heard a suggestion for that school. We heard some at the last meeting. We heard some other things thrown about as well. So, okay. Assuming there are some other buildings out there because this idea was thrown out, does anybody see a reason not to make it a 24?
We're at about 5.
But
Better than a rental.
well, we don't know what the building is. But I'm assuming if we renovated it, we could make it secure and safe. Whatever building we picked, we would make safe and secure.
If we picked the right building, it could be.
May I just say something? The school belongs to me. The school that he was referring to belongs to me. And if you have any questions about whether it could be one way or another, you can ask me.
Okay.
It's been thoroughly examined, architects have looked on it, etc.
Okay. So there's one other building option. I mean, because it's a whole hypothetical thing, I wouldn't say to give it more than a 12 in this instance.
We wouldn't pick a building that
We would have to
that
find.
potential.
We would have to find a building first of all.
Well, we wouldn't pick one that didn't meet the possibility of having good security and safety.
That's a very good point. She said we wouldn't pick a building. We wouldn't consider one that didn't have a good potential to be safe and secure.
Well, a lot of this on that school is already done. That has to be done according to the law.
So, by a raise of hands, who thinks we should put 24 on that?
I think we should. Whatever we pick.
Who thinks it should be closer to 12? And who thinks it should be closer to 0? Okay, it was about half. The 12s and the 24s were equal. What if we made it 18?
Oh, there you go. I think split them.
This is not a specific building.
Right.
This is a hypothetical building.
Right.
And because it's hypothetical, there's a lot of unknowns. So no matter what we put up here, it's going to have to be reevaluated if that's one of the options that we're talking about. Okay?
Okay.
So for this case, anything we evaluate against these criteria is going to be a challenge.
Right. We don't have a building in
Everything
mind.
we evaluate because there's not a specific building in mind. But if you've got some in your head, it sounds like there's at least one, and maybe others. Think about those as you consider these criteria. Okay?
Can we leave it blank for now? No.
It'll be really hard to total. No?
Yeah. I liked your idea of splitting the 24 and the 12 at 18.
It was about an equal number of hands that went up, so that's what we're gonna do, and make that 18. Build new courts and renovate the existing courthouse for the other spaces. Any reason that couldn't be? I mean, to me, that's the 24.
Right.
Because we're doing a total renovation, we know the building, new courts would probably be located in the most efficient location. Okay, so that's how we go about identifying these numbers in this process. And that one was a pretty easy one to do because it was about the potential. The second one is also kind of a potential one. Can provide enough area to meet the needs. So if it can, if these options can provide enough area to meet the needs, then we need to give it a 15. If it can't, if it's a little bit lower than that, we have to give it fewer points. Renovate and expand the existing building. That site is big enough to house a building of the size that we're looking at for the space needs. So if we were to renovate it, it would be able to accommodate those space needs. Don, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And one thing to keep in mind with that square footage number, that's just what we've heard so far. So it could be less than that square footage based upon follow-up interviews and a design sheet.
Could be. Yeah, it'll probably change one way or the other, and each number will probably shift around. So building new on a new site, we wouldn't pick a site that, unless it was big enough.
Well, that'd be 15.
Yeah. Build new on the existing site,
That'd be a 15.
same thing. Continue renting. You currently aren't renting space that's of adequate size. You'd have to rent a whole lot more space.
I think then you need another option, additional option, because if you're talking about just renting the current space, that's different than putting out for a 5-year lease and advertising for somebody to build you a building. That's a whole different story.
Yes, it is.
And you may, if they're considering renting just that plaza out there, if that's all they're thinking about, then there's a whole other option, and that's put out for a 5-year lease.
So put out for a 5-year lease, couldn't that happen with any of these options?
Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
So it could happen with any of these. You could say, we want you to do it right on this site. And we want you to do it in this manner. That's a way of delivery more than it is of picking which.
Well, how many people here are thinking that maybe some of these will lease instead of, right? I think almost everyone here is thinking that when you look at renovate, you're owning the property, you're not leasing the property. You think about building a new one, you're thinking about owning the property, not leasing the property.
Wouldn't have to be. But
No, it
that
doesn't
would be
have
my
to be.
first thought as well. Yes, sir.
It might help if to clarify what he's talking about is something that you're well aware of, is how the federal government manages their building needs. Yeah, basically the federal government leases. And the reason that they do it is rather obvious. It gives them a lot of flexibility, it gives them a lot of options. And one of the things it doesn't have to tie so much money up initially, and as their needs change, they can lease a different building.
With some of
And
the
I think if
facilities,
this
they
group had an idea of what that concept is all about, they would look at it differently than simply renting an old plaza in Osage, which is really what you're insinuating as the option. The renting option is the plaza, but the renting option is really significantly greater than that if you take into consideration the option of build and lease. Would you not agree with that?
Ray's going to respond to that.
Yeah, I've done a lot of GSA work, and I'm a GSA peer, and they do have areas that they lease, but they've got more building stock than they can fill up right now. So they're trying to get rid of the lease space, use their best building stock, and then sell off what they don't have. There was a program that started about 5 or 6 years ago where they started doing, because money was so hard to get hold of, and the FBI needed facilities. And they started a whole building program of leasebacks, where developers would come in, bid on it, and build it, and lease it back for 20 years. and they were basically paying rent. And Congress stopped it. They were starting to do that on courthouses too, and Congress stopped it. You'll see a few still going, but that program is costing the taxpayers a lot more than having them own their own building, at least at the federal government level. And that's current.
I'm not in a position to dispute that. I find it amusing that the post office basically leases all their buildings.
That's the post office.
And that would be a good example of an organization that is going to be continually facing changes, much like I would anticipate Mitchell County's courthouse use is going to change as time goes forward. And I'm not sitting here tonight, obviously wouldn't be in a position to say that's the best choice.
Yeah.
But I think we would be foolish to not give that option some very serious consideration.
There are projects around the country that are going, they call it 3P, where you come in, and there was a huge one in California. And then there's one in Texas that's coming up. But these are huge projects, hundreds of millions of dollars. Developers are coming in, bidding on projects, building them to the spec of the user, and leasing it back for a 20 to 30 year period. And they're actually maintaining it, and all that the government has to do is pay rent. So that is a program, that is an option, but it's a delivery option.
I think it's a very valid conversation, but I really don't think it's going to change any of these as we compare them against these criteria. If they do, we can talk about it at that time. But any one of these could be a lease option, as we said. And you can build a new building, you could build it and own it, or you could do a lease to purchase, or you just do a lease to lease for a period of time, and you don't own anything when that lease is over. That's a delivery method, and this is a solution type. So we wanted to say, we're going to do a lease purchase agreement or a lease agreement. It really doesn't change the options we're looking at. The continue renting is really the idea of continuing renting the spaces that you're in now. You know, the county has had to lease some of the spaces they're in over a period of time, so they got 2-year leases, 3-year leases, 5-year leases, whatever they may be. So it's kind of continuing like you're going, is what I heard at that meeting on the 24th when that was brought up. Why don't we just continue renting like we are? Now, as far as can't provide enough area, we just lease more square footage if you need more area, right? It'll cost more. We'll evaluate those costs. This becomes one of the top options. But I think you could just rent more space, and you'll have the amount of square footage you need. Does anybody disagree with that?
My only question is where? I know for a fact that they're in a hard time finding as much space as they have now, as that they're renting.
There are no open buildings in this entire town. Nothing at all.
Where? I don't know. Where are there?
I've
just know there.
seen a few things on the storefront.
Again, may I say that I own that school, that I offered it to the supervisors free of charge, no rent, to use as the temporary courthouse, and I was turned down.
So there's adequate square footage out there, it sounds like. There's space available. So we're going to give that one a 15. Then renovate another building or add on to another building. Again, that's hypothetical. We have to find the building. Is it big enough? Can we accommodate enough area to meet the needs, the 40,000 square feet?
I don't think that's, if they have that difficult a time finding locations, you know, they're split up into how many different locations, right?
I don't know.
Only 2?
Different locations. It's more than 2. All the officers that came out of the courthouse are in more than 2 places. At least 3. 4.
I guess only if they did the Washington building. I can't think of any other building adequate.
Economic
What's the
development,
Washington
is that another
It's a
location?
school building, South 7th Street, 2-story.
can renovate another building, accommodate the area that we need to meet the needs?
It would depend.
It depends again on the building. We can't be confident to give it the full points, I don't believe. I would probably say let's give it a 10. Maybe we find it, maybe we don't, but I would be confident giving it the full points, unless there's a specific building that can accommodate the 40,000 square feet. So we would renovate. Everybody agree with 10? Yep. Okay. Okay, build new courts and renovate the existing. We were to build a new courts facility and renovate the existing. Hypothetically, the courts would probably go adjacent to the jail building, renovating the existing. We might have a little more need. What's the square footage of the existing courts building, Don? The square footage of the existing courthouse?
I think we were around 15.
17 gross, 15 net. And the court's square footage is?
There's 6,000 within that building.
Okay.
And they need 8.
They need 8. So that means of the 39, we've got 31,000 square feet. Existing is about 17. So we need about another 14 that we could add on to the existing courthouse. So as long as we added on to this option, we could accommodate that square footage. But if we don't add on to the existing courthouse, almost doubling it in size, it won't accommodate that. So if whoever recommended this option says, and everybody kind of agreed to it, it's okay to expand in addition to building new courts. We got to build new courts and renovate the existing, but it would also take 10 to 14,000 square foot addition. Then we could accommodate that. So with that option, we're okay to say, yeah, we would expand the building too.
You could then.
Who agrees with that? We would expand the building too. Who doesn't agree with that? Okay, only 4 didn't agree, and about 15 did. So I would say then that gets 15, if we're allowed to do that. Visible, identifiable, and easy to find site. Most of these are the same site. If these get a 4, they all get a 4. It's not that many points. Renovate and expand existing. We don't know what that new site might be. We don't know. It's hypothetical. I'd say we don't give it the 4 points. We either give it 2/3 or 3/4, so it means it's either a 2 or a 3. Let's give it a 3. Build new on the existing site. It's the same place.
Oh, continue renting, I don't know, it's gonna.
That one's not as visible and identifiable and as easy to find. I would probably give that a 0. Who says 0? Okay. Renovate another building. Again, that's the same as this. We really don't know where that building might be. And then build new courts, existing, it's in the same location. It's only worth 4 points. I always spend a lot of time on it. Promote civic pride in county culture. That only got 2 dots. Promote civic pride in county culture, which was very surprising to me, because I would say a historical reference promotes civic pride in county culture. But it is on our goals for success, which is on the back of this. I was just looking, where'd that go? It's on the back of this board. So promote civic pride in county culture. I would say that continuing to rent probably doesn't promote civic pride. Hopefully it doesn't promote your culture in the situation that you currently have. I would give that a 0. I would say that renovating and expanding the existing does. Building new on a new site, don't know, but whatever you build, you're going to want it to promote civic pride. Excuse me? It's hypothetical. There's only 2 points. We'll give it 1. Build new on the existing site. That's hypothetical. Renovate another building. That's hypothetical. We don't know the building. Build new courts and renovate the existing. We'd like to think that that's going to promote civic pride. That's not even worth scoring because it's only 1. Everybody okay? We skip that one? Yeah. This one is 4. Can be a flexible and adaptable solution. So flexible and adaptable means it can change over time. And we heard about You know, post office has changed. There may not be a post office a decade from now, but we know there will be courts. They may be doing things differently, but there will be courts. Yes? Somebody? Okay. So of 4 points, can be flexible and adaptable. So flexibility in the design, easy to expand, easy to change the inside, easy to support modern technology, changing technology. So with that, renovate and expand the existing. Do we believe in that?
If we renovated it, it would be 21st century.
What was that? Okay, anybody don't? Who thinks 4? Who thinks 3? 2? 1? Okay, we got people all over the place. I'm going to give that a 3, simply because I know the load-bearing walls in the existing building. It's not as flexible as a new building would be, so I cannot give that a 4. Typically, when you have a building that's all load-bearing walls, you end up giving spaces a lot more square footage than they need to accommodate what needs to be done. So it just doesn't have the flexibility. I'm going to give it a 3. Should give it a 2, but it's not many points. Building new on a new site,
4.
definitely. Building new on the existing site, definitely. Continue renting in the situation where that you are. I don't know how flexible and adaptable that is. You're pretty hamstrung. I give that a 0.
Yeah.
Renovate another building, and we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know what kind of building it might be. I'm thinking 2.
2.
Are we okay with a 2?
2. Yeah.
Build new courts, and then renovate the existing, and then some expansion on the building.
Same as the
Again,
first one.
I would say that's probably a 3 again. And then we've got model for sustainability life cycle cost. So in any of these scenarios, as you plan, we want to be able to look at not just what's our capital cost, but what is the utility cost, what is the operational cost, and what is the maintenance cost. Typically, we tell our building owners that you should budget for at least $1.50 a square foot annually for your facilities. Older buildings may need $2, $3, $4, $5 a square foot, depending on what kind of buildings they are. Like the state capitol might be looking at $10 a square foot for their annual maintenance budget. Don?
One of the other things to keep in mind for this one is that if you were to build on a site along this jail, some of those operational costs would be transporting the prisoners back and forth. So that makes a big difference too.
This life cycle costing, this is the ongoing county taxes that you're going to pay. Yes?
Considering our courthouse is only used like 5 times a year, I don't see where that would really raise the cost a lot. 5 times a year?
No.
That's what somebody had in the paper.
Well, I'm sure that is not accurate. Because in the few times I've been in it, there have been lots of people in the building.
The issue, I'd say, the greenest building is the buildings that's there, and there's technology available to make the old buildings much more energy efficient.
There are technologies to do that, but with the old building, you're dealing with a solid masonry wall, and there is no way you're going to make it as energy efficient as a new building. I mean, I'd say maybe you can get 3/4 of the way there. But with the new energy codes that are being adopted every 3 years as we move toward energy neutral buildings, in year 2030, this building can't, an existing building of just about any type of that age cannot do it. I restored an old neo-Georgian 5,000 square foot house. I paid utility bills, I know what it's like, and I did everything possible. So we do have 2 sustainable issues here, environmentally and life cycle cost. And my recommendation would be that renovate and expand the existing, to me, that's a 0, that's a 4, that's a 4, that's a 0.
But when you're tearing down the old
That's a
structure,
0.
there's a cost
That's a
there in
2.
terms of landfill.
I don't know how you can get what.
You just made an assumption that we're tearing down an old structure.
Under the one that says on the current site, you can't build on the current site without tearing down the old one.
Can't you? That's quite an assumption too. We have not studied that, so I don't know that to be true.
But if you renovate and expand, the portion that you're expanding, which could be substantial.
Yes.
That building, it could be 3 times that building, or a couple times that building
Right.
size.
Yeah, it'll be twice the
That
size.
you could make
You can make
efficient.
that piece.
So I would
very
not
efficient.
give that
should
one
get
a 0.
something.
We should get something.
Okay, what do you think it should be?
2.
2 out of 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 1. New on a new site, that's 3.
Excuse me, are you deciding or are we?
What do you think? The number of them are not listening. I'm listening to the people that are speaking.
He said 0.
I said 0 and I wrote 1.
But we got 1 on there.
I said 1.
There you go.
Well, who thinks, okay, the most I can get is 3. The existing courthouse, life cycle cost, maintenance and energy. Who thinks that should be a 3? It's good to know who the people are who aren't listening to what the facts are about historic buildings. I love historic buildings too. Who thinks it should be a 2? That's quite a few hands. Please keep your hands up. We're going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Who thinks it should be a 1?
It should be noted, Kevin,
4,
that
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Who thinks it should be a 0? Nobody. Okay. The vote is that it's a 1. Okay? A new building on a new site. Who thinks it should be a 3?
Well, I suppose, but.
I mean, the goal that we've been given is the life cycle cost, the operational cost is as low as possible. Who thinks 3? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Who thinks 2? 1. Okay. Build new on the existing site. And that would be a 3 as well, right?
But when you get down
Some
to
people think it would be a 2?
the environmental.
What would you do with what you tear down?
We haven't said that we're tearing anything down.
The existing site, how would you build there without tearing it down?
We'll be looking at that in 2 weeks on the 28th.
If you build on an existing site, you gotta tear it down, don't you?
Not necessarily, that's a very large site. We haven't looked at that yet.
You'd have to eventually tear
You're
it down.
assuming
and
that it's
fix it
being
up.
torn down, and that is not part of the written assumption. Penny's gonna buy it.
Yeah, right? If it's not a courthouse, it's not gonna be there. I mean, that's just.
3?
how it is.
Sound like the majority agrees that that would be a 3. Continue renting, sustainable life cycle costs.
0.
That is not sustainable. Renovate another building.
We don't know.
We don't know, but what we probably believe is it's probably a 1 again, because the
Give it a
fact that it
1.
would meet the energy codes, probably not even after those renovations. Build new courts, renovate existing.
2.
Okay, who thinks 2? Please keep your hands up. Count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Who thinks 1? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So it's 14 to 16. We're going to split the difference so that we're going to upset everybody.
You never said 3.
No.
Renovate existing?
It's not gonna
It's
be
not
a
a
3.
Old building again.
You can't make that a 3.
Right.
It's impossible.
What's the
We can't afford to do that unless we put a dome over it. It was only 3 points. Okay, the next one is 1 point. That's sustainable environmentally. Do we want to go through the process of these?
I think let's just skip that one.
Economic development, catalyst, and tourism. Got 7 dots next to it. So we want to go through that one.
I think the tourism one, existing buildings on the tourist map.
Economic development catalyst can mean a lot of things. People come to your community, they're thinking about building a new business, they're going to look at how you've invested in your community. The communities that invest in their communities are going to attract new development, new businesses. Those who don't, nobody's going to come here unless they're looking for the absolute cheapest deal that they can find. I think we all understand that. Everybody agrees with that, right? Also, tourism can be an economic development catalyst as well. I'm from Dubuque. I'm here to tell you.
Not if you build a new one. People come from a long ways away to see the old one.
Could be. Could very well be.
They do. I talked
So I definitely understand the importance of tourism to historic preservation.
Build a new one looking like the old one.
You could build a new one looking like the old one. You could build a new one on another site and keep the old one and let it become more of a tourist attraction. You could do a lot of things that, on the historic side of things, a lot of hypothetical stuff. So it's worth 7. Renovate and expand the existing. Who thinks it's a 7? Who thinks it's a 6? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 7's way outnumber everybody else who voted for the other numbers. Okay, build new on a new site. Building new on a new site, Benny, we tear down the existing court? I don't think so. I hope not.
I would assume there's not money to fix it up.
So there's a historic preservation component to that too. But you're building a new courthouse. Who believes that that is an economic development driver?
Give it
a new courthouse? No? Anybody?
I'd give it something.
We've got a few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay.
Give it a.
Okay. So, is that a 7? Who thinks it's a 7? How many people think that's a 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15. Who thinks it's a 6? 5, 4, 3, 7, 8, 2, let's do it, 1, 0. Okay. We had enough other people that weren't voting, even though there were 15 people who voted for 7, there were 8 people that voted for 3. It was 8 people that voted for 3, right? And so that's probably a 6, because it's not a 7, even though 7 had the highest number. Halfway between, even though the numbers were skewed that much. How many people are okay with 6?
5.
How many people want it to be 5? Okay, 5. Build new on the existing site. Should we start with 5? Who thinks it's a 5? Build new on the existing site. Who thinks it's a 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. Who thinks 4? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Please indulge me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1.
Can I vote twice?
No. Okay, we're going to make that one a 4.
Nice try.
We're going to make it a 4. Is everybody okay with 4?
Yeah.
Okay. Boy, economic development catalyst.
0.
Continue renting. 0.
0.
Renovate another building.
We don't know. We don't
We're
know.
renovating another building in town. Is that an economic development catalyst?
We don't, yeah, it would, well, yeah, it would. Some.
Who thinks 0?
I'd give it a 3.
1, 2, 3. Please keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What was that? 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. 6. 7. Okay, so that's probably a 3. It was pretty even. Everybody okay with 3?
Mm-hmm.
And build new courts, renovate the existing. So it's very similar to this one.
Mm-hmm.
Who thinks 7? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 24. I think that's as many votes as we got for anything. That's what people think it's. Okay, here's a big one. Fundable and justifiable solution. Is it fundable and justifiable? So,
Isn't that a no-brainer?
no matter what we do, it's got to be fundable and justifiable.
Right.
It has to be fundable and justifiable. If it's not, we're all spinning our wheels here. Every one of these has to be fundable and justifiable. We've heard how important it is that the cost of this has to be known, and it's got to be acceptable, it's got to be fundable.
Does the rentable one, does that even fall into that category?
Sure.
We have to be someplace it's fundable.
Every one of these solutions, as they're developed and studied, has to be fundable and justifiable.
So everyone gets a 32 out per hour.
Everybody agree?
All right.
Okay, look at the progress we're making. Adjacent to the county jail. It only gets 5, but we're going to go through that one because we've heard that's pretty important from the sheriff's staff and from the court staff. And probably a lot of people just thought, oh, that's a given. And it wasn't the top 2, it might have been the 3rd. But 5 points on that. Adjacent to the county jail. Renovate and expand existing. It's adjacent to the county jail, right? 5. Build new on a new site.
We don't know.
Unless it's on the site on the other side of the jail, it's probably not going to be 5. So it's probably 4.
No, well, we don't know.
No?
We said another community even. We don't
0.
know. I'd say
1.
maybe a 1.
Who thinks 1?
No. I don't even know. It's hard to say.
There's a bunch.
Let's go
Okay,
0.
let's say 1s and see how many we got.
I'm going
1, 2, because a lot of people raise their hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Who thinks 0? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's over 20. It's going to be a 0. Build new on existing site. That's a 5.
Maybe a 5, yeah.
Make sure that looks like a 0, not a 6. Continue renting.
0.
Renovate another building.
0, because we don't know where it is.
Same as the other. Build new courts. That's a 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The last one provides historical reference. It provides a historical reference. And we've heard some folks even tonight say, if you built new, I think it was a gentleman in the back said, if you built new, what does it look like? You don't know what it looks like. It could look like the existing building, or it could look like some very contemporary thing, or it could look like the state capitol. But it's got to be fundable and justifiable. We don't know what it looks like. It may not be historic. If you built new on the existing site, like many times is done, components of the existing building that are still structurally sound might be retained. I don't know, that's all hypothetical. But it will not be the same building that's there.
No.
As a matter of fact, even this option will not be the existing building that's there. That courthouse has been added on to, based on our research, half a dozen times and modified in many ways. And even with this option A, that would be the case again. So provides historical reference, up to 30 points, renovate and expand the existing.
30.
Who thinks 30?
30.
Yeah.
Does anybody think it's less than 30? A couple people think it's less than 30. Okay. Not enough. There was over 20 that thought it was 30. Okay. Build new on a new site.
0.
Does that provide historical reference?
No, no.
Why not?
It won't be on the, nothing.
There's no background, there's no history to the building.
Well, you're building new on a new site. Nothing's going to happen with the existing courthouse, right? It's not going to be torn down for sure, right?
Oh, no, I wouldn't, I'd say pretty much for sure it'll be torn down if it's not renovated, pretty much.
Okay, but from our conversation last time, we said, what if we didn't want to take the courthouse down and we built new on a new site? And that's why it was the second option. We built a new courthouse on a new site so that some other usage could be given to the existing courthouse building.
That's never been an option, that's been supported
It's an option.
by the supervisors. I've never supported that option.
But it is an option.
Well, I suppose it is.
Yes, it's definitely an option.
Where would the money come from to renovate it? What would the use be?
I don't know.
Well, exactly.
Don't know.
Some building that's going to deteriorate on the site.
Right, it would become a hazard.
Could be.
I think that you probably should keep assumptions down to a minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to keep assumptions to a minimum.
Okay,
If it's on a new site, we're not talking about what's going to happen to the existing courthouse
Yes, but
building.
but
If
that's
it's on
not-
the existing site, if it's retained and not removed, then it's going to be pretty crowded on that site. I think we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's on a new site, we don't know what's going to happen with that building.
Are we not building on a new site, building new on a new site and we're building on a historic?
Historic provides a historical reference.
We have a historic value in the new building.
But why?
The courthouse does not have historic
Kevin, why
value.
don't you
Yeah,
explain
that's
what
true.
historic reference means?
The courthouse would not.
The historic reference means that the courthouse, the existing courthouse would be repurposed to something else. We're
Well, we
currently
don't-
working on a project. We
Can't
did a
assume that.
historic structure report for a building that is the oldest building in the state of Iowa still being used as a school. It's in Bellevue, Iowa. It's right on the river. It was the county seat. It was the county courthouse. Right now it's an elementary school. They're pretty darn proud of their elementary school. They would never consider taking the building down. That's just one example of how a building could be repurposed.
Well, they've talked about burning it down, using it as something for the firefighters to practice learning how to fight, put out fire. That's the only thing I've heard them say.
You're making some assumptions about this.
I don't think we could assume that the existing building would be there.
Aren't we talking about the courthouse and if it's built, if that building is built new on a new site, what historical reference does that new building have?
That's why I'm thinking about the new building.
I think it's zero.
Okay, let's, yes.
The young lady over here wants to have you explain a little bit more in detail. She wants to know if you're talking about historic value or historic reference, and what the new building would be, not this
Right.
building.
We're talking about the new building.
This site could have an historical reference back to what you have in the community.
Right.
Not necessarily lacking historic reference.
But no guarantee.
It would not be the existing building. I think we all acknowledge that. It's a new building on a new site. It would not be the existing building. If we're talking specifically about that new courthouse building, providing a historical reference, it depends what you design in. Many times when we do public buildings, we build in artifacts and storytelling into those buildings. I wouldn't say, yeah, that's a 30. It might be it might be a 5 or something like that, but that's up to you, what you think it is. It's a new building.
0.
So who thinks 0? Raise your hands, guys. Who said that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So 30 people said 0. Does anybody think it should be 1? No, that's 30 people. Okay. New building on new site, 0. So a new building on the existing site.
0.
You think 0?
0.
0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, 0. Continue renting.
0.
Who thinks 0?
You don't need to vote on it. Wait, is the plaza 50 years old? Maybe we could get on the National Historic Register.
Doesn't even have to be 50. Architecturally so. Okay, renovate another building. Again, it's very hypothetical.
We don't know.
We don't know if it's a new building, old building.
Yeah, but we don't know.
Okay, who thinks 0? Who thinks 0? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Because we don't know what it is.
Who thinks 5? Because we're going up to 30.
5, maybe.
All right.
Who thinks more than 5? 4. So that's enough. So 5. We're going to say we renovate another building. It might be historic. It might have some type of historical reference. Maybe. Okay. Build new courts, renovate existing.
30.
So the courts move out. The courts move out, so it's not the same.
But it's got, still has the historic reference. What's the symbol on the county newspaper? It's the courthouse, the front of that courthouse.
Well, Penny and I have something in common, and maybe over some of the rest of you. We've served on historic preservation commissions, and I've been the chair of Historic Preservation Commission, and written historic preservation guidelines, and written historic nominations to the National Trust. So there's significance of many types, right, Penny? There's architectural, and historical, and cultural significance. So if you change the use a bit, maybe it's not a 30, because the use is just a little bit different. But if everybody feels like it's a 30, who thinks it's a 30? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Who thinks 25?
Could be a 25.
I should say,
Courts are out.
who thinks less than 30? Okay. How much less than 30 for those people that have their hands up?
25.
I think 25. I could live with that.
Okay, 25.
Yeah, well, the student side will be totally different. But it will lose the court.
Okay, you got your calculators? Some of you probably added all these up already. Ooh, you got Continue renting didn't get much support. Okay, so all the 6 options. 123 for renovate and expand existing, 87 for build new on a new site, 92 for build new on existing site, 52 for continue renting, 75 for renovate another building, and 118.5 to build new courts, probably adjacent to the jail, and then renovate the existing and then add on to it. Okay.
In reality, A and F could be identical.
They could be.
It's not saying that one.
So what we are asking you to do now is to look at this, because this isn't a science. This is generally where we think, we get a reaction that, boy, that scored 52, that scored 123, that probably doesn't make sense to us. Maybe we shouldn't even talk about this. So you kind of can eliminate that, to look at this and say, okay, we're going to study two different solutions. Which two do you want us to study? As a matter of fact, as Ray said, A and F are very similar. A would be us studying how we can put the courtrooms and all the court spaces, whatever, into the existing courthouse or right against it as much as possible. We know the building's going to be twice the size. How can we get all that in there, consolidate it into one building? F is very similar to that, except you put the courts closer to the jail. And as we are studying, when we're here on the 28th and the 1st, we can probably combine A and F into a similar study.
You should have made that clear at the very beginning.
No, you're going to decide. You're going to decide which two you want us to study.
We just decided.
Based on this.
There's number 1 and number 6 were together. They should have been together on
Right.
that list, and there was only
That's fine.
There are 6 places, number 1 and number 6 were voted.
Yes.
And if you're going to stand there and tell me that I don't have, you've got the numbers right there.
The reason I'm bringing it up is because we've been told by several advisory committee members that they've asked the planning board to evaluate the cost of new versus existing. And if you don't ask us to,
But you didn't say
and
that.
please let me finish. Please let me finish. If you do not ask us to study the new, and you don't have to, if you do not say our recommendation to the planning committee tonight that we're going to carry back to them is to study the new, we will not study the new option, and we will not be able to compare those costs.
Well, the vote there should tell you what, too.
We don't have enough people from the county to make a decision, I don't think, tonight.
Wait a minute.
You had a meeting set
No, we are not
from
Congress.
6 till 8, and a lot of people do not work that early. And like tonight, 5 till 7, a lot of people don't get off work till 5:30, 6 o'clock, and they gotta drive from Riceville, Statesville, St. Ansgar, or vice versa. You don't have the proper people here.
You said we could take 3.
That's what I'm saying.
We could take 3 options, people, okay? That was 3 options were a possibility at the beginning of the meeting.
You just, because you want to build a new courthouse, that's not the way the game is played.
Yeah.
That's not why we're here. We're here to identify the options that you want us to study. That's why we are here.
But the supervisors did say, and what people did ask for.
If everybody could please listen. Please listen.
The supervisors did say, and actually many people did ask for, what's the cost of renovation compared to the cost of building new? And even though, like we here tonight say, it should just be those 2 renovation options, I think a lot of people in the community do want to know the cost of building new compared to the cost of renovating. And I think we should do that.
Yes.
What I think.
That is, may I speak? I think that we went through a process tonight that you told us we were going, and you set the guidelines, and we voted in good faith. And
Yes.
honestly, you've got the 2 winners. You have got the 2 winners right now. That's
Okay.
the way we voted.
Thank you. Ma'am, first you, please.
I agree with Mary, and I feel that you bamboozled us at the last and said that number 6 were one and the same. And I think you stand there, yes, you did. You said they were one and the same.
No, I said they would be very similar.
Yeah.
Before I go to you, the point I was making was, we said early on that we could do 2 or 3 options. We would hope that you would narrow it to 2.
Yes.
Yes, and just now what I said was, if you wanted us to evaluate new, those 2 options that receive the highest points are similar enough that we could study them in the early stages of the design workshop.
They're 2 different designs entirely.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't that make sense if
you're talking about combining the two, and the third one, there is a third option up there to look at all three of them.
No.
Because you did say early on, you'd like to have two, there's a possibility of three.
Yes.
Two are so close and so similar, that only makes sense to look at the third option. I can't see from here what your third option even is.
Building new.
When it makes sense to look at the third option.
And to be honest, when we look at these, we're not gonna look at one option for option one. We're gonna look at probably 4 options for option one.
Right.
And then we're gonna look at 4 for the option 6, and there's gonna be overlap, because they're the same.
We're gonna be looking at, when we do the design workshop, we're gonna be looking at how the spaces can fit inside the existing building, the best and the most efficient way. And we'll have 5 architects working on this. We work together and then we break off. And then we come back together and we break off and we get input from you. We're happy to just do 2. And Mary, we are not here to design a new courthouse. We're here to do whatever the county decides that they want us to do.
And we're here tonight because we
So what we are doing is we're offering to say we can study 3 if you like, or we can study 2. It's up to this entire group to come up with what your recommendation is going to be to the planning committee on what you want us to study.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Like, the option between 1 and 6, they aren't the same.
No, they're
But
not.
also, it's a good compromise. It isn't like a bad thing because you have the existing building and then you have a new structure, either around the old courthouse or around the jail. It's kind of a win-win situation for both sides. That's my personal feeling. Then you're not hitting that emotional tag of people who want to save the historic building, and you're not downgrading the expectations of the people who want to work there and want to have a modern facility and more space. So I think 1 and 6 are a good compromise.
Regardless of whether we renovate the existing or build new, it will be a modern facility when we're done with it.
I understand that. But that's what I'm saying is, if you leave it at the 2 options without getting the third one in there, I think those 2 options pretty much speak for what the county wants.
This person's next, and I'll come right back to you.
I disagree because we're looking at renovation, and I don't think that we can do that without considering new, because if you've ever renovated something, you could end up with huge costs. And then you've got nothing to...
We don't know.
We don't know.
Okay, next. I'm sorry.
I've talked to a lot of people in the county, and I think what most people are just wanting to know is cost is important to the people. And, we don't know. Maybe it would cost way too much to renovate that building. We have no idea. But when the vote, they voted the bonds down, then I think it was Joel said on the board, well, then we're going to go back and we'll have a historic preservation architect, tell us what it would cost to renovate. Then we'll also know what it's going to cost to build new, and then people, And I think that's what a lot of people in this county want to know, simply, what are the 2? He said, then we'll have something to compare. And I think people want to know. Cost is important to people.
Now you're making a point to the rest of the group.
But you said cost had nothing to do with this, that you were not considering cost now.
Right now, we are not considering cost.
So, if you're not considering cost, then you won't be considering giving us any information on cost when you develop.
Not tonight. Not tonight, we're not talking about cost.
But you will?
Well, we will.
Okay.
As we said all along, we are going to study the options that the planning committee directs us to study based on your recommendation. You're the advisory committee. What you recommend to them is what we are going to study. We're going to develop that further. We want to integrate you into that process of developing those solutions during that 2-day design workshop. And then at the end of that workshop, we will be developing costs for those options.
I think the concern is that the deciders, here's what people they're afraid of, that the deciders have already decided they want a new courthouse, and so if that's an option, it doesn't make any difference that's what'll happen. Now, hopefully the deciders will not do that, but I think that's a concern that I've heard expressed from people. So that's why there's so much agitation about just leave it with those 2 renovation options. I think if there's real honest, you know, the deciders are really honest and really consider the 2 options, I think that some of the people in the advisory committee have expressed to me concern that the deciders have already decided. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I would like to not be so cynical, but you know, sometimes things seem that way, but you know, I would hope.
If you're following the guidelines that was set up, not everybody in this room is a part of the advisory committee, correct? No. Then everybody that's on the advisory committee should go to the other room and vote then, and the people that are not on the committee doesn't vote then. I brought that up at the first meeting, this was gonna happen. If you're not on the advisory committee, you can't make the decision to tell the people what you want to do. So if you're not on that committee, you have no vote tonight.
But that's not what they
said.
said.
The first meeting.
That's not how they ran the meeting.
First meeting that only advisory committee members can vote. Now you're letting the whole room vote. Which is it?
Everybody who came tonight deserves the right to make that.
But that's not what was said before.
I don't know that we said exactly that.
I remember the discussion last time was, because I asked you that question. The more people you get, the more divisive the conversation gets. I asked you that question, and I asked you to define who the advisory committee was. And you said there would be people that were on the advisory committee, and those were people that would be invited to come. So now everybody votes, or the advisory committee votes. I asked that before last month. So now which is it?
It's up to you. You're the advisory committee.
I'm asking what the rules were, because now it's like, no, we're not going to follow that, where it's just advisory committee, it's everybody. Because as the gentleman said, we need to have more people here, then it's going to be a vote of the county and not just the advisory committee. So, which is, I'm confused.
About half the advisory committee members did not show up today.
Well,
Yeah.
So they don't get a vote.
I guess not.
Is that reasonable? I think that's what I heard.
I just want to know, because I was confused at the first meeting, how this is going to all come together.
Yes, sir.
Okay, considering A and F are presumably roughly the same, take building building new on the existing site as a second option. Because you're basically number 1 and number 6 are the same, except what you're doing on number 6 is you're building new courtrooms and refurbishing the structure, the main courthouse structure, but building new courtrooms adjacent to, supposedly adjacent to the jail and the sheriff's office. So you are basically doing A and F the same way, so therefore you should pick building on a new site as a third option to get a new cost availability so that the cost can be compared to satisfy everybody. We can discuss it on the 20th.
Yes.
If they're the same, why didn't you combine them?
They're not the same.
They're not the same.
They're similar.
And you had us in good faith vote for one or the other, again and again.
Yeah, those are the 2 top point getters.
Yes, well,
it is very clear.
that's the
All I did was say, we said early on that we could study 3 if you'd like us to, and we've heard members of the advisory committee say, we'd like to see the comparison of the cost of new versus existing. That's all I'm doing, is throwing it out to you. The advisory committee is going to decide. Yes, sir.
I've always felt that, you know, the more information you have to work with, the better off you are. Right. If all I know is what it's going to cost to fix up what's there today and to build or to build adjacent in comparison to what it would cost to build new, then I'm not an informed taxpayer.
Right.
And the rest of these taxpayers are going to be footing that bill, and they need to know which choice is going to be the best one for them. And we also have to take into consideration the efficiency from the standpoint of utilities. That cost is going to run for 50 years. And where do the 2 or 3 comparisons come in on that?
Yes.
Are we at the point to call for the question for a vote on, do we ask you to do 2 or do we ask you to do 3? I mean, are we not at that point?
I don't think
We were letting everybody voice their opinions, but
Yeah.
I think we're very close to that point. Right.
Well,
Right, the advisory committee is the one who makes the recommendation to the planning committee. Okay? Now, if the advisory committee wants to hear what the rest of the members of the public that were invited as well, that have participated tonight, I think that's a really good idea.
I do.
Yes, Doctor?
Should we take, say, 10 minutes so that people here who are not on the advisory committee can talk to people that are on the committee and have a chance to talk about?
I think we've been doing that.
Yeah.
I think we've been doing that.
Yeah.
So,
when can you give us the cost?
at the meeting on the 14th,
The meeting on the 14th
meeting on the 14th of March.
Would you be able to tell us that a new one would cost 6 million and an old one would cost 4 million?
Or whatever.
Whatever the costs really are. Our best opinion of what we believe the costs are based on the scenarios and the designs that you help us develop during the design charrette. So what we got two options here. The advisory committee members, of which there are about 42, about half of the advisory committee members are here. (18, 19, 20). 20 are here. So those 20 are the ones that will carry the recommendation, their advice, to the planning committee. Those 20 are the ones that probably is most appropriate, as he said, because they're making that recommendation, is to take the vote. But I would also like to know what the other members feel. That won't be part of the formal advisory committee, but I think the advisory committee members probably want to know. So we're going to go about this, and I don't even know which one of these to look at, but there's a couple options for a new building. It could be on a whole different site. Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't need to be a pastor, but when I read it in the paper, maybe I never kept up with the press news, but I only saw there were 5 people on the committee, and that was the 3 commissioners, Mark Walk and Bryce.
That's the deciding committee.
And those are the only 5 people, so when you said 19, I don't know who they are.
There's a planning committee and there's an advisory committee. So I'm going to read off the names of the advisory committee.
Why don't we just stand up?
Yeah,
That's perfect. Advisory committee members. Okay.
Now, these are the people that are going to be taking this stuff to them, planning.
Correct. Okay.
But I would like to have a sense of the people that are here, if they think we should just consider the 2 renovation options, or if we should consider the renovation option and the building new option. I'd like to know, you know, what the people here think. You took enough time to come here.
You've got to have 3. You've got to have the new versus the renovation.
Okay, let's just take it. Let's have the advisory committee members. If the advisory committee members could all come over to the side of the room, please.
If you don't compare the new to it, what are you doing?
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Not everybody? Hey, Don, is that an advisory committee member back there with you?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Okay. Of this group, the public that have made an effort to attend here tonight, how many of you just want us to study A and F? How many of you want us to only study the top 2 vote getters?
Can I tell you why?
No, we're just voting. You don't need to tell us why. I think we know. So there's 3. How? 4.
You
How?
think you know, so you're assuming.
We've had discussion for an hour. How many of you think we should also look at a new building in addition to the 2? Okay. So you've all seen that, which is what Penny asked for.
We need the cost.
Okay, now your group has to come to consensus in some manner to determine how you are going to make your recommendation to the planning committee. And how many of you are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16.
There's clearly 3 scenarios then, not binary. Right, 3.
Why don't we just vote like they vote?
Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Yes.
Can't we blend the old with the new? Number 1 and number 6, let's build new next to the courthouse for the extra footage in the court and whatever. And renovate the courthouse, rehabilitate the courthouse like people in Des Moines suggested we do in the first place. And we can have all the space and still have a lovely courthouse.
And you're talking to them, not to me. Okay, so how many of the 16 of you would like to recommend that you also look at a new building so you can develop the cost? 1, 2.
Can I ask one question though?
Yes.
Okay. No, the question is, and that's a big concern I've heard expressed from a lot of people, that the deciders all want a new courthouse that
Right,
doesn't
right.
make any difference. They're just going to build a new courthouse. That's what I've heard from a lot of people. You know, I know that.
Do you have a suggestion, Penny, of how we should vote?
I don't know. I mean, that's just a concern. I guess I'll express it. But
I've heard it 3 times tonight.
yeah, take it to the people. Put it on the ballot.
Okay, how many people want the information on the cost of a new building in addition to the top 2 vote getters? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15. Okay, so officially the recommendation to the planning committee is to ask us to evaluate A and F as well as a new building to develop the cost. And it'll be B or C, it might be B. Okay, who wants, okay, we'll vote between B and C and then you can do that too. New building on a new site is B. New building on a new site is B. New building on an existing site is, yes, maybe.
Clarify that if they're on a new site, they'd also have to include the cost of purchase of that site.
Yes. Yep. We'll have this into our cost. Or new building on the existing site. Who wants us to study B?
What is B? Excuse me.
New building on a new site is B.
Well, not 92.
New site is B. Existing site is C.
92 is the third.
That's a little C, 92.
Okay. Well, let's vote.
Well, we already have. 92 is the third option that was chosen.
Okay, who says C? It's got more points. Who wants C? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, it's C. Okay. That's the recommendation from the planning committee meeting.
And when you do that, include the cost of demolition, because really,
Yes.
yeah, it would have to be, yeah.
I'd like to ask, okay, are there more to this committee? I know one left. Are there any more members to that committee?
Well, there was 40 that were on the sheet.
There's
They didn't
40?
show up.
They didn't show up. 20 didn't show up.
But it was a pretty good one.
How were you all appointed?
All we did was ask.
Lowell just called and said we were on it.
How'd they do that?
It wasn't established. How many are we already from Osage? I don't see anybody St. Ansgar or, there is one from, isn't it? Are you really representative of us?
I don't know. There's some other 20 members that weren't here, so I don't know where
Well, I'm just asking.
That's a good question. Okay. Yeah. Right now it's 7:15. The schedule, upcoming schedule is on the agenda. The next thing is the design workshop. It's going to be 2 full days. It's going to happen right here we are going to look at those three options. We would ask that everybody please come and weigh in on what we're doing. And you're going to have the opportunity to say, yeah, move that over there. What if you did this? What if you did that? For 2 full days. Because again, we'll be making presentations at noon and at 5:30 during both days. The advisory committee meeting is at 5 o'clock the second day. That's March 1st. So that's the advisory committee meeting. The public, again, is invited. We'll be basically showing them the result of everybody's work who shows up. And then there's an advisory committee meeting on March 14th where we'll bring those back with some refinement and with costs. And then again, they'll be making a recommendation on what they believe is most appropriate to go back to the planning committee. The folks who had specific questions about courts and things like that, now is the time to do that. Others, feel free if you need to go. It's been a long night already. Now's the time we can respond to those questions.